More than likely, if you're involved with horses, you've used a bit. You're probably familiar with bits, their various shapes and textures, as well as some of the traditions and fashions that surround bits. But have you considered what really happens with a bit inside your horse's mouth? It is this very question that led the Myler brothers of Marshfield, Missouri, to discover how bits were really working with their horses. Aiming toward effective communication between horse and rider, Ron, Dale, and Bob, all experienced horsemen, wanted to understand the pressures caused by bits and why so many horses developed bit resistance. In the process, the Mylers created an innovative system of bitting, one that may be described as a whole bit better.
Welcome to Morrisville College. We're standing in the Stallion Barn facility. Today we're here to talk about bridle bits, specifically Myler bridle bits. My brother Ron Myler trained cutting horses for a lot of years. And all the time he was training horses, he was building bits for the horses because he was trying to figure out how to get a horse more relaxed into the bridle so the training become easier for him and the animal. He also, as he was doing this, he did realize that bridle bits don't train horses. Riders and trainers train horses. A bit only allows the horse to be more relaxed into a bridle or become more evasive. So all the time that he was training, he was trying to figure out how to make this possible to get his animals more relaxed into the bridle for him. Then in 1987, other people were starting to want some of the bridle bits that he had designed. So he started doing some bits, and he would go out and he would sell a few bits. He'd come back, build a few more, go out and sell them. And as it progressed, then he asked if I would come into the business with him. So then I started into the business with him, and I started going to shows and stuff. And then our other brother, Bob, he wanted to join the company. And that's how the company was formed. Today, everybody's involved. If you walk a horse away from you, or you bring him towards you and this horse is lame, you can see that and tell it. If you're brushing a horse and he starts to flinch, then you know he's becoming sore someplace. There's so many things you can tell from the outside of a horse. And that's why we feel the mouth is probably the most misunderstood part of a horse, because nobody takes the time to open the mouth, look inside and see what's happening. Now there's a lot of theories about bridle bits and communication with horses. And we feel that there's a lot of misconceptions. And so what we're trying to do is to go and educate people and give them a better idea how the bridle bit works inside of the horse's mouth and the pressure points it puts on a horse and the pressure points it releases a horse. Through this education, we're hoping you'll have a better idea how to bit your horse properly to allow him to become more relaxed into the bridle.
Prior to Dale's seminar on bits, bit action, and bit usage, the Mylers would like to point out a few things. First, bits do not train horses. Riders and trainers train horses. The bit is a communication tool which either causes a horse to be more comfortable or more evasive, but it does not train a horse. Second, you need to consider your horse's overall health, especially his dental health. It is very important that your horse's mouth be in good condition and regularly checked by a qualified veterinarian or equine dentist. And finally, you should be familiar with the points of pressure caused by a bit and the various parts of a bit.
All right, right now we're going to talk about the basic pressure points that may be used by a bridle bit. One would be the bar, pressure point number 1. 2 would be the tongue, where the tongue is inserted in here. 3 would be palate pressure, where they're up in here is where you got the hard and soft palate. There can be palate pressure. Underneath the lower jaw, there will be curb pressure. On top, you can have nose pressure. And if you pick up here and look at it, the pull would be over top behind the ears here, and it would be considered what we call pull pressure on a bridle bit. So these are the points where bridle bits can put pressure on horses. All right, we're going to talk just very briefly about the basic parts of bits. This happens to be an English bit. This is what we'd consider the cheek piece. This one here happens to be a D ring because it's formed like a D. So we have the ring of it, we have the sleeve. This happens to be the part of the mouthpiece that goes to the bar. This is a single jointed mouthpiece. Very basic set of bridle bits for English. This bit here is a shank bit. This bit here has a different kind of a mouthpiece. The mouthpiece is designed to hit the bar here and then raises up into a port in the center. The shank on this bit is designed to where you attach your headstall here, your curb strap here, your rein here. From here to here is called the purchase of the bridle bit. The overall cheek piece is called the shank. And that's the basic features of the bridle bit.
You have to know your horse, know his feel, and know what makes him happy. And that may sound, like a carrots and sugar type of statement, but happy is part of longevity. A horse that looks like he's comfortable to ride, a horse that's a pleasure to ride. Those are the key ingredients. And if you've got quality movement, it's a gait of grace. You have a horse that can jog and lope with grace. Grace is a thing of youth.
The milers have constructed their system of bitting around 3 levels. The factors that define each of the levels are age, training, and maturity or disposition. Level 1 is for the young horse or the horse with little training. Immature, he is just learning to work with the bit in his mouth, soften to the bit, and engage his hindquarters. In this first stage, he's learning basic gaits, transitions, and obedience. Level 2 is for the horse that is beginning to mature, that may have established basic training and is now progressing further into a particular discipline. This horse may be able to successfully bend, collect, and extend, and is now working on more complicated skills. The Level 2 horse is responsive to the leg and seat aids. Level 3 is for the horse that is considered finished or fully broke. He is very reliable and may possess advanced skills in his discipline. Very responsive to all the aids, he's relaxed and willing to do all that is asked of him. These levels are all relative to your horse and your horse's disposition. Your horse may be right at a certain level, or he may be between levels. You need to consider your horse's maturity and disposition to determine your horse's level. Is he very sensitive and responsive to your aids, or does she have her own opinion some of the time? A senior horse that hasn't been ridden for 10 years may be a Level 1 horse as he goes through refresher training, so take account of your individual horse and what may be his appropriate level. In review, Level 1 is for the young horse or horse with little training. Level 2 is for the maturing horse or horse with intermediate training. And Level 3 is for the mature horse or horse which has advanced or finished training. Now, let's join up with Dale's seminar for information and demonstrations with Level 1 bits.
Everything that I've ever read about bitting horses, all they do is refer to the bars of a horse, and nobody refers to the tongue. Well, we're very concerned about the bars of a horse, but actually we feel in the first 2 levels of training we train more off the tongue than we do the bar, so that we save the bar for a finished bit. And the reason we say this is because right behind your back tooth, it's the same as the bar on a horse. It's a piece of bone covered with skin. You could take your thumbnail and press it in there as hard as you can press and walk any place you want on this facility. But if you stick your finger in the center of your tongue like this, you won't go 30 feet and wish you hadn't done that. And a horse is the same as a human. When a horse swallows, his tongue bubbles and elevates towards the palate. It'll twist and it'll elevate. It makes no difference if you're an English rider, if you're a Western rider, or if you drive horses. Basically, everybody is striving for exactly the same thing. First, when you start a horse, you break him in the face. And as you're doing that, you're using your other aids. So that when the horse becomes better trained and everything, you start staying out of his face as much as possible. And when he's a finished horse, you leave him alone when he becomes a finished horse, you leave him alone as much as you possibly can, and you use your other aids to make your maneuvers. The most important thing about breaking colts is patience and repetition. So if we're going to start colts, what we're going to do, we're going to go with what we would consider pinch and restriction bridle bits. By that we mean a bit that collapses, it pinches the outer lip, it squeezes the bars inside the mouth. It goes between the bars and takes the tongue away from the horse. So that is like you sticking your finger in the center of your tongue like this.
You are probably familiar with a number of level 1 bits, as most are snaffle-type bits. There's the loose ring single joint snaffle, the egg butt Bristol snaffle, the comfort snaffle D, and the full cheek twisted snaffle. Although they may look different, all these bits function similarly.
So these are all bits that we consider level 1 bridle bits. The other thing that I try to bring up is I always relate horses and people in the same category. We're both animals, we both learn through repetition. So if you take a child this size, you tell them no, and you slap their fingers. When they get here, you say, now I've told you twice, don't make me tell you a third time. And when they get here, well, this is my opinion, what's your opinion? All right? Well, that colt is this child. But that colt's bigger than we are, he's stouter than we are, and he gets flighty once in a while. We do not bid him to hurt him. We bid him to handle him.
If your horse is scared of his mouth or scared of your hands or scared period, right, he's not going to learn. It's just like a person. If you're scared, you're not focusing, you're not going to learn. They have to be relaxed, and they have to be comfortable with what they're doing. The level bits you have, I think, can take you from the first time your colt is bitted till the time you want to go to the horse show and show him in the reining. I really think that they've really helped our program a lot. I really like them a lot in the starting of horses. Especially in our program, we have a lot of different level students, and we get a lot of problem horses, and they're a very forgiving bit.
There's a tremendous amount of horses that are started in a loose ring. Here's just a single joint loose ring mouthpiece. All I'm doing is basically pulling back on him. I can't go down and ask him to come to the bit. The other thing is, have I got more lift or have I got more back pressure to me?
More back pressure.
More back pressure. Okay, it's also harder to pick up and maintain a shoulder in a loose ring bit on a horse because the ring, again, moves inside the mouthpiece. You've all seen horses where they've had them bitted in loose rings, and as soon as they bit them up, of course, the head stall's here. When they start to pick up, the rein comes up here. A lot of times that rein will come clear up to the head stall. But when it gets just past this point, you've lost the lift of your bridle bit. So when it gets up here, you definitely don't have any lift. So it's harder to pick a shoulder up when you're starting colts with a bit like this. And it's also, you can't get much down pressure to ask him to come into the bridle. So to us, a loose ring is a drag and pull. It's a bit where I'd drag through a baby, I'd pull his nose here. I'd drag through and I'd pull him here, but when I stepped him out here, I'm going to put a different set of bits on him because I want a little more pressure into the tongue so I don't have to squeeze on the bars so much. Now there's a lot of old-timers will tell you, and being an old-timer myself, I used to think this, that we bit colts in loose ring bits because it teaches them to pick a bit up and carry it. Well, my question to you is, does a colt actually learn to pick a bit up and carry it, or is it merely because every time he swallows, he's got to move that bridle bit that the bit's moving on him because it's laying in across his tongue? Another bit that is widely used is the single jointed bit in a D ring. This is a little Western D here. But this mouthpiece has been used for years. I've started lots and lots of babies in a single jointed bit. So let's see what this bit does.
A downward.
I can get some downward pressure.
Downward pressure.
Okay, and this is what I'm looking for. Now there's a misconception about snaffle bits. All right? Let's look at here. A lot of people think that a snaffle goes to the palate of a horse. But let me ask you this. If my degree of pull is from above the withers to that bridle bit here, how can that bit go up? Because my degree of pull is going like this. My bit has to rotate down. So it goes down into the tongue. It does not come up into the palate. The only way, and I've had veterinarians and I've had equine dentists say that they've worked on horses that have been bruised in the palate and stuff, okay? Well, the only way I've figured out how they've done that with level 1 bits, if it's true that when I'm on top of the horse, my degree of pull is from here to here, my bit goes down because my rein comes up here, then it's just as true that when I step off of that horse and I step to the front of him to lead him, and my rein comes down here, my bit goes the other direction. And that's where I think they bruise pellets on horses with snaffle bits, is leading them. So I can get some down pressure with this set of bridle bits. Where we feel that there's a miscommunication with single jointed bit is when we want to pick the shoulder up. We want to pick that shoulder up. What's that doing now?
It's direct pressure in the center of my arm.
Driving down?
Driving down.
Okay.
But
So it is driving down
it's
into
driving down into my arm.
Okay.
Yes.
This is where we feel there's miscommunication. When them rings catch, you're going to drive into that colt's tongue, and you're trying to pick a shoulder up and move him off his shoulder and lift him. So you're asking him to do two things. You're asking him to drop into a bit, and you're trying to pick a shoulder up and hold the shoulder. Because your rings catch here, and they do catch. And it'll drop right into his tongue, and you're trying to pick up on him. So we feel that's miscommunication. Then you'll see a lot of people, they'll take a colt, and they'll bring him like this. But a lot of people will just nudge him and ask him to come. And when they do that, does that keep catching?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
So what it does is it just keeps going like that. And when it does that, you're going to drive into him. All right? So what we did to try and get away from miscommunication on the horse is we came out and we designed this set of bridle bits here. Now this bit is approximately the same width in the center as the single jointed bit. All right? This is a little single jointed bit. This is a little bit here that we designed to have the same feel in the center of the tongue, but let's see what we get when we do the lifting on it.
You have the direct pressure, but it's very comfortable.
But it is down.
It's a downward pressure. Mm-hmm.
Is that a lift?
That's a lift.
Is that a lift?
That's a lift.
Any pinch?
Not at all.
Okay.
Very smooth and soft.
So what it does, when I go here, both of the bits do exactly the same thing. They both drop down and take that tongue away from a horse and ask him to come to me. But when I want to try and pick a shoulder up on a baby, that's all I do, is I lift the bit to pick a shoulder up. Nothing catches and drives down and asks two things out of a colt. It only asks one thing, lift up and come to me. A lot of single jointed bits are straight, right straight across through the mouthpiece. Now we curve our bits through the mouthpiece, so let's see what happens here. On the side of your arms here, how much pinch and how quick do you have pinch?
Fairly immediately.
Immediately?
Immediately.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Immediately.
All right. Tell me which one of them pinches your arm quick. So is it immediately, or is it take longer for the other one?
It takes longer for the other one. You're definitely pinching right here.
All right. And how about squeezing out here?
Yes, and it
All
was a
right.
definite squeeze.
And that's why on these snaffle bits and stuff, these level 1 bits, we curve our mouthpieces, is to wrap that bar and not have so much of a nutcracker effect in that horse's mouth right from the get-go. All right, other bits that are used within a level 1 category, in our opinion, are the 3-piece mouthpieces, like this.
You may recognize some 3-piece bits, but others may be new to you. The full cheek hinged Bristol snaffle, the egg butt Bristol snaffle, the comfort snaffle with copper roller. Again, they may look slightly different from one another, but all these 3-piece bits basically function the same.
Well, let's see what this bit does.
It's a downward pressure.
All right, is that a lift?
Nice lift.
Is that a lift?
That's a lift.
Okay, these are a nice set of bridle bits because very seldom will the rings ever catch. Once in a while they'll catch, but it's very seldom. So we feel these are a nice set of bridle bits to get some lift on a horse, and you'll get the down pressure when you come here and ask a horse to come to the bit. So we tried to design a bit that would never catch. So let's see what this bit does.
Nice downward
Is
pressure.
that a lift?
That's a lift.
Is that a lift?
And that's a lift.
Any pinch on that?
None at all.
Okay.
Very soft, comfortable.
Okay, so this is a bit that we've designed that a person might consider in place of either what we consider a Bristol or a French link, because it always lifts, but it still goes down across the center of the tongue. Another bit, because we thought we was trying to do something a little softer, was we went here and we put a wider center in this bit than we did the one that we're comparing to the single jointed bit. So let's see what this feels like.
Downward pressure.
How's it feel into your arm?
It's soft.
Is it softer than some of the others?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, is that a lift?
That's a lift.
That a lift?
That's a lift.
So the wider area of that tongue that you cover, the easier it is on the horse, but you're still taking that tongue away from him, restricting his swallowing and asking him to come to you. So that's where the difference between the three-piece bits and the single-jointed bits come into play, is where the pressure is either centrally located or covers a wider area.
Selection of spurs, selection of bits has an awful lot to do with your training equipment. If we go to too heavy a bit too quickly, or we go to a bit that gives them an undesirable feel, such as pinching, too severe, we take the sensitivity off that horse that we're going to want to build into it later on. The mouthpieces I found extremely comfortable. I like it in the aspect of your first visit to the dentist office. If your first visit is bad, that's probably something you remember the rest of your life. For me, I think that we've got to accept the idea that these are young horses. They're speaking a different language than we do. So when we go to them, we have to slow things down, relax things, make it comfortable, so that they can escape from the idea of thinking that they're going to be trapped and hurt and punished, and reward them by making things soft and feely. And the bits that I've used have certainly given me that feel, that I am relaxing on a horse and letting them feel comfort. One of the biggest helps that we've ever had, I think, along the way was when we found a bit that fit Smart Chicolina, and Del Bell won the world for us, and that gave us a real kickoff with Smart Chicolina to create the horse and the legacy that he's sired already. Is that bridle, that bit, fit him and made him comfortable, made it easy for him to show. With Del's soft hands and ability to recognize the horse's potential, when we started that bit, I remember the first day you explained it to me, and I was a little skeptical, but it's because we've got buckets full of bits that haven't worked, but that one worked.
Now you are familiar with Level 1 bits. In review, Level 1 bits are for the young horse or the horse with little training. Level 1 bits utilize the tongue sensitivity by restricting the tongue and collapsing on the bars. The degree of tongue restriction is determined by the bit's center and can vary from concentrated for a stronger signal or more dispersed for a softer message. Working mostly on the tongue, Level 1 bits aim to save the bars for when the horse is more mature. It is important to understand bit resistance when working with any horse, but especially a Level 1 horse who is being molded for his future. But what is bit resistance? Bit resistance, or evasion, can be seen in a variety of forms, with the most common being overactive mouth, inversion, pulling, not stopping, and getting behind the bridle. Overactive mouth is easily recognized. The horse may chomp or chew the bit. He may hold his mouth open. She may put her tongue over the bit. Or, as we see here, he may put his tongue completely outside of his mouth to evade the bit. An overactive mouth can be quite frustrating. A horse may be relaxed at the pole or quite responsive to the bit, but it is obvious that he is not as relaxed as he could be and is distracted by the bit. Inversion is when the horse isn't relaxed at the pole, but evades by traveling above the bit, as shown here. Inversion may be constant or intermittent, as a horse raises above the bit, returns to the vertical for a short while, and then back up again. It can be slight with the nose poking out, or very dramatic, as when a horse suddenly flips his head up. When a horse inverts, his back hollows out, and he's not effectively engaging his hind end. With a short, choppy stride, his gaits may be rough and somewhat uncomfortable. Leaning, pulling, or not stopping are other ways many horses evade the bit. When a horse leans or pulls into the bit, he is stiff through his neck, heavy into the reins, and his center of balance dumps to his forehand. The rider or driver puts pressure into the reins, asking the horse to collect, stop, or round up. The horse doesn't come back to the hand, but resists by counteracting the bit's pressure and going forward into it. This is when an all too common tug of war begins. The battle with a pulling horse may be slight and just simply annoying, or it may be severe, as when a horse grabs the bit, locks his jaw, and bolts out of control. Getting behind the bit is another form of bit evasion. Instead of relaxing at the pole and holding his head on the vertical, the horse curls up his front end and tucks his chin toward his chest. Moving like this, he does not meet the rider or driver's rein pressure, and his center of gravity is pushed forward onto his front end. He may go behind the bit all the time, or he may do so intermittently, tucking back from time to time. Let's take a look at some of those same horses, but now using different bits. Note that the horse who previously held his tongue outside of his mouth now has it back inside. After only a few minutes in a new bit, he looks much more comfortable and relaxed in his mouth. But why? The horses which inverted are now relaxed at the pole. Why? Although they have only been in a new bit for a short while, there is a noticeable change. This horse's strides have lengthened, and he is using his top line more than with his previous bit. Why is that? The pulling horse is lightened up and is now more consistently on the vertical. In a new bit for only a brief time, he has smoothed out his stride, and his rider is able to communicate with him using softer pressure through the reins. Why is this so?
There's only a certain number of ways that a horse can try to evade the bridle bit when you're handling his face. And these are some of the different ways they can do it. All right, so rather than just taking and going to a stronger set of bridle bits or starting right into twisted wires and stuff, let's just sit back here a second and let's see what's going on with the bits with inside their mouth. All right, that colt now is this child, where we told them no and slapped their fingers. Now this colt or this child is getting a little more knowledge. This child's getting a little older. We're going to try and give them more freedom and responsibility. If they can't handle it, we'll take it away from them, but let's do the same thing with these colts. So let's review what goes on inside the mouth when we start getting these evasive problems. First thing, if a horse gets his tongue over top of the bridle bit, the bit collapses, goes down into the lower hollow of the jaw. He's released tongue pressure. If he sticks his tongue out the side of his face, the bit collapses, goes beside the tongue, instead of directly into it, he's released some tongue pressure. If a horse drops down here and gets heavy in the forehand, the bit comes over top of his tongue, straight pulled into his lips, he's released some tongue pressure. If he lifts up out of the bit here, the bit will come over top of his tongue and straight pull into his lips. He's released some tongue pressure. If a horse keeps opening his mouth and you don't continually come with your hand pulling on him, the lower jaw comes behind the vertical, he has released some tongue pressure. If a horse brings his whole front end behind the vertical here, we don't want him there. We'll give him some rein to try and get him to float back. He has released some tongue pressure. So every one of these things that a horse is doing to try and evade you when you're handling his face, in one phase or another is releasing a certain amount of tongue pressure from him. And that's the only way they have to communicate. Either they're relaxed into the bridle or they're trying to evade you when you're handling them. What figure eights, flashes, drop nose bands, and cabezons are designed for? They are designed to keep the mouth shut. Let's figure out why the mouth is open. And if you bit your horse up to where he is relaxed and comfortable, you should not need flashes and figure eights to keep a horse's mouth shut. And the two things that you have to have on a horse, no matter what discipline you're in, is you have to have them relaxed into the bridle and you have to be able to move their shoulders where you want them. Because horses don't follow their head and neck. A horse follows his shoulder. You've all either been on a horse again or you've seen horses where they've tried to blow out from under somebody. They'll take a hold of them, they'll bring their nose here, and the horse continues to go over here. A horse follows his shoulder, not his head and neck. Head and neck are balancing points. So you have to have him relaxed into the bridle and be able to move them shoulders where you need them to be. If a horse is evading your hands, take the time to try and figure out what it is that he's evading. If it's a bridle bit, look at your bit, look and see the pressure points of that particular bit, and try and figure out what it is about that bit he's trying to evade and take that portion out of the next bit that you put on him. Instead of just assuming that this horse is trying to get bully and belligerent, and by golly, I'll bit you and I'll bring you to the bridle. Free him up a little bit and give him the opportunity to be able to come back into your hand rather than you have to bring him to your hand. Okay? Does that make sense to anybody?
Now let's take a look at level 2 bits.
So what we're going to do is we're going to try and give this colt a little release. Now we're going to, I've told you twice, don't make me tell you a third time situation. So what we're going to do on him is we're going to take the collapse off of him. So we're not going to collapse and put a lot of pinch on the outer lip and the bar. We're also not going to go between the bars and take a lot of tongue away from him. So we're going to soften up on him and see if he's not allowed to come back into the bridle.
The philosophy really is to stay out of their way and let them work. And, you know, we do a demonstration called, in the clinics, called Good Hands and Body Language. And that's really what it takes to be a world-class barrel racer, I believe. Is a barrel racer has to know how to communicate with her horse, and part of communication is not just talking with your hands and your body, but listening with that same entities that talk, listen with the same things that you talk with. You know, you learn how to listen with your hands, and you learn how to listen with your body. You know, they have a way of talking and communicating, and we as horsemen have to understand that language and talk in a way that the horses can understand what we say, but then we have to listen in a horse way so that we understand what they're saying to us in return.
I'll never forget our conversation at Devon in '96 and about bitting my Olympic horse, Eros. And from that day on, he has always gone in one of the Myler bits. And about making the horse more comfortable. I think so often people think of putting a strong bit on or a sharp bit to get the horse light or obeying the hands. But so often to me, I think in some fashions a milder bit that they're happy and, as you say, more relaxed, then they perform better. And you just can't do too much of the basics. And that the horses can concentrate, and it comes a bit habitual, the way they work, and again, that relationship between horse and rider. And I agree just what you're saying. Once the horse can accept the bit and all, in the end, and I teach really no hands, very light hands. It's about balance. It's about the way you sit. You know, I want my horses to have self-carriage. But how can a horse have self-carriage if the rider has no self-carriage, has no balance? You know, most of the time we see, or I see, strong hands because of the rider's lack of balance. Very often it really isn't the horse. So as the horse accepts the bit, then you can really have no hands and let the horse do what it does naturally.
I knew that bits were a problem, but I didn't have any answers, so I decided to not do anything about it because I couldn't tell the people what to do. And what I found with the Myler system was a system of bitting that actually made the horses comfortable and allowed them to function. And after I got done with your first clinic here, when we had you down, I sat up with my anatomy books for half the night trying to figure out why these horses did so much better when they had the bits on. And what I found was pretty exciting, because I found when I connected all the muscles together and looked at what was happening with the horse's mouth, it directly connected to the front legs and really to the whole body. So when the horse's tongues are comfortable, the muscles from the tongues connect to some little bones called the hyoid bones in the throat. And from the hyoid bones in the throat of the horse, there are big muscles that connect to the shoulders and to the sternum. So when you have tension in the tongue, you automatically have tension through the throat, through the bottom side of the neck, and down into the shoulders and the sternum. And the horses can't move their legs or their neck the way that we want them to. They can't bring their sternum up. They tend to drive it down into the ground. When we release the pressure on the tongue and allow the mouth to be comfortable, whatever that is for each horse, then the whole front end of the horse can move much more freely.
You may have seen some basic level 2 bits before, such as a traditional mullen or the full cheek mullen barrel shown here, the short shank mullen barrel, and the D with Mullen triple barrel mouthpiece. Similar in design, these mouthpieces all work in the same fashion.
This set of bridle bits puts even pressure across the tongue and the bars. It can only control however thick the tongue is above the bar. It can't take any more away from the horse. It doesn't collapse here, so we've taken the pinch off of him, and we're only controlling however thick the tongue is above the bar, but you can still pick him up independently. All right? So that's a set of bits that might be considered in a second level. Here again, this set of bits that I would have used on a really nice baby, but he might not have been the right bit for some other youngster. I might want to take more tongue away from that first youngster. This may be where I'd go for a second level bit to give him a little more release of that tongue. Because this, still when he comes to it, has the ability of giving him some release. Another bit that might be considered is this bit. This is a bit here where we put a lot of snaffle feel into. So it's got a lot of snaffle feel and freedom to it. It wraps, but it doesn't collapse and pinch. It'll wrap around that bar to give a horse a little warning, so it's got more warning that you're going to pick up and handle a horse's face. So if you got a colt that's kind of fragile in the mouth or something, when you pick up, he's got more time to say, oh, they're going to handle me. But it still only controls however thick the tongue is above the bar. It doesn't take any more away from him. All right, straight bar bit. Everybody's familiar with a straight bar bit. If I take a bit and it's straight bar and go straight across from shank to shank, D-ring to D-ring or whatever, and it goes straight across here. If you've got one, go home, bit your horse up, open his mouth, and he'll have a groove in his tongue like this. However thick his tongue is above the bar, that bit's going to lay right through his tongue because your bit will always go to the bar of your horse. So if it's straight across, it's going to the bar, and it's going to go right through the center of his tongue. I've opened horses' mouths at clinics that have had indentations across their tongues from bits laying on them for years. And that's one of the two reasons that as you look here, you can see we curve our mouthpieces this way. And we did that so that when we have a horse on light or no contact, this horse has more freedom for that tongue to swallow. And the second reason we did that is by curving the mouthpiece this way, it still allowed us to come to the bar at somewhat of an angle rather than direct bar pressure, so we're still trying to save the bars on our horses for finished horses and stuff. Okay? So those are the two reasons we did that. Now, on these bits, we've had people ask us why we attach the head stall and the rein. There was a couple theories about that, and one of the theories was that we did that to turn the bit into a gag bit. But that's not what we did. In order for a bit to be a gag bit, you'd have to have a cord attached to the cheek piece of your head stall that went through both of these slots with a ring at the bottom and your reins attached to that ring. Now that would turn this bit to a gag bit. But what it did by attaching the head stall, it turns it to a curb action, not gag action. And all we did was we did exactly the same thing that a full cheek was designed to do. A full cheek was never designed to be ridden without bit keepers. A bit keeper attaches to the head stall and goes over the top of the full cheek. And what it does, it allows the mouthpiece to activate, and when a horse comes to it, the head stall draws it back, stands the bit up more, and rewards him for coming to the bit. Otherwise, you see people ride them without them, and the instant they pick up, that bit drops like that. There again, it just drops down on his tongue and lays there, so he never gets rewarded to come to the bit. Every time he swallows, he's got to move that bridle bit. Only here, we don't have anything to put a bit keeper over top of, so we merely attach the head stall to the D-ring to allow the mouthpiece to activate, and when the horse comes to it, the head stall brings it back and rewards him. Same principle. The reason that we attached the rein on our bit was not to give the bit more authority on a horse, but to make it easier on a horse. I'll show you, it's a little easier to show you here, possibly with this kind of a mouthpiece to hold. If you'd hold this in your hand. We'll move this over so your little finger's the bar. Let me move the bit. There. Now just hold it just kind of loose like a horse would hold it in his mouth. Okay. If your head stall slides and your rein slides, all right, first time you picked up, your head stall came back here anyhow, your rein's going to come up here. So let's just visualize that to start with. So if your head stall and your rein slide, you tell me when I've lifted. Right there?
You lift it right there.
Feel the pressure on your little finger?
Yes, I do.
That's the bar of the horse. Once your rein gets up here, you've lost a lot of lift of that bridle bit, so now you got to put more bar pressure on the horse to pick up and maintain shoulders and things. Now, if I attach it here, tell me when I've lifted.
You lift it.
How much pressure's on your little finger?
Very little.
Okay, thank you. And that was the reason that we attached our rein, was to be able to utilize the bit with less bar pressure on a horse instead of letting our rein get up past center. So once I come up here, I've lost my bit, and it's going to be harder for me to pick up and maintain shoulders than it is if I utilize it here. And it's easier on the bar of my horse, and that's what we're concerned with. We have never tried to build a set of bridle bits at our shop to be tougher on horses. Bits can be as tough as you want them to be. We've always tried to build them to save the bars on the horse and merely make a horse more relaxed and comfortable for the rider. You can ride this bit with head stall and rein attached. If you do not want to attach them, put your head stall here and your rein here to start with, because that's where it's going first time you pick up on your horse. You can ride it with the head stall attached and not the rein. Right behind where the head stall attaches, there's two holes. And the reason we did that is so that we could add a curb. And this is what we happen to use on our bits is quick links like this on them, because that's how quick I can put a curb on him, and that's how quick I can take a curb off. So as I was saying, when we did that, it made the bits very, very versatile, and there's a number of different ways that you can ride the bit, and any time you change it, you're not making a drastic change of the feel of that bridle bit within the horse's mouth.
Let's take a closer look at some basic Level 2 mouthpieces. The Low Port Comfort Snaffle, or MB04 mouthpiece, offers snaffle-type pressure, but with a port. An excellent choice for a horse coming out of a basic snaffle, the MB04 offers tongue relief before restricting the tongue and collapsing on the bars, encouraging the horse to relax at the pole. The Myler's Mullen Barrel, or MB32 mouthpiece, does not collapse on the bars. It is a solid mouthpiece, applying pressure across the tongue and directly on top of the bars. Similarly, the Mullen Triple Barrel, or MB32-3, also works across the tongue and on top of the bars, but it flexes through the center barrels, which allows it to collapse slightly onto the sides of the bars for more dispersed pressure. A horse can enjoy some tongue freedom with the MB32-3 by slightly lifting the jointed center.
One of the things that differ about a mule than a horse is they can't tolerate any pain. That's what I like about the Myler bitting system is you make many different bits, and you can find one for the tolerance of that mule for that level of training that you're in. And the mule is always comfortable in the right bit when you select the right bit from Myler. And that's what you want them to be, is very comfortable so they can think. So when we ask something of them, they know that we're asking something and we're not scaring them out. The first thing you look at is the eye and see what they got a lot of expression in their eye. If there's any fear and they're feeling something that is uncomfortable just by laying there, they'll show it in the eye. It's real important that they have their concentration on you in order to have proper training and a proper responding mule. And then particularly when you get into these high-speed events in the cowboy mounted shooting, we need to eliminate all of the miscues that can occur. And that's what I love about the Myler bitting system.
We have what we consider 98%ers out here, in which case 98% of the time you know that this horse will never put himself or the rider in a situation to get either one of them hurt. You can put as nice a set of bridle bits on this horse as any bit builder would build. The horse that's right beside him is exactly the same way 80% of the time, and 20% of the time this old pony's going to see a boogeyman. He's going to see a fence over here. He is going to see an opening to go out of an arena, maybe a limb come across if you're trail riding across the trail. And in his opinion, if he can just leave you there, he can go back to the barn, okay? This horse you bit for the 20%, not the 80%. But you bit him with a nice set of bridle bit as you can put on him for the 80% that he's going to be there, but on the 20% be able to take a hold of him and say, no, you come back this direction. So you bit him as nice as you can for his disposition.
The dance of the bits, I think, really describes what we now need to do with bits. In the past, you tried to find a bit that worked for your horse, and that was what you would ride him in until the day he died, or until somebody came along and sold you something else that was prettier or fancier. Now I think we need to recognize that as we increase these horses' levels of training, that they go back to being beginners at the new level. So they go from being an educated horse at a training level or at a lower level of competition, a novice level of competition, and then we move them up to a higher level of competition or a higher level of training, and they become less educated. And so we very often have to bounce back to one of the lower level bits to help them learn at this new level of training. And then we go back to the more advanced bits. And as we progress through the horse's training, as if this horse is going to continue to advance in his training, we often have to do this dance many times, sometimes going back to a basic bit for 2 weeks, sometimes for 2 months while we teach them something new. If you dance, you can find a way to make a horse comfortable with a Myler system. And if you experiment around, no one horse is the same, and many horses change. But I think that this has explained to me what bits can do for horses and has shown me this whole system, how comfortable horses can be with a bit in their mouth.
This is a standard correctional mouthpiece. Now people ask me, what's it correct? All right? Whoever built this mouthpiece and whoever designed this kind of a mouthpiece to start with, that's just the name they gave it, the correctional. So it's maintained over the years as a correctional type mouthpiece. But it'll collapse here. He can still waller his tongue through here and stuff. But if you'll look at this bit right here, it'll have edges on it. So when you pick up, it'll go to the edges of that horse's tongue. So what I'd like to do is just have you hold your hand up like this. Now, if the palm of her hand represents the tongue of the horse, I want to see her, whether or not she feels this, go to them edges on the palm of her hand when we take them here. Does that go to them edges or
Yes,
not?
it goes to the edges.
Is it a little bit sharp?
Yes.
Feel?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, now, this is exactly the bit that we may need on a horse just to hold him into a frame. All right? We might need to go to the edge on him like that just to say, no, come here and just stay right here. But not all horses need to go to that edge, so what we tried to do was stay with the correctional feel as far as wrapping the bars and stuff and soften the bit up. So what we did is we went here. Now if you look at this mouthpiece, it's the same mouthpiece, all right? But it's all rounded underneath. So there are no edges to it. So let's see how this feels. Just steel down into the palm of your hand?
It's in the palm of my hands, but it's softer.
Softer because it's consistent feel?
Yes.
It's more of a consistent feel because it's consistently round. Here's something to think about, because when you are looking at your horses and you're working your horses, the whole idea is to find out where that horse can be the most comfortable so that his focus can be on you as a rider or a driver. So you're looking for the comfort of that horse. So what you're trying to do is give him as nice a set of bits as you can. Some horses prefer to have more of a direct pressure into their bar because they've got a secure feeling there with that security of bar pressure. Other horses are more comfortable if you wrap that bar for them because that's where they have the security, by being wrapped through that mouthpiece. So these are things you're trying to figure out. So that's why correctional bits and stuff wrap, and then we start putting tongue relief into them and stuff. And so the last set of correctional bits that we built here. And if you look at this bit, see how much width we have down here, how wide it is at the bottom? So this horse has got a lot of freedom of that tongue. Now this bit, instead of coming down onto the tongue, goes clear to the edges, and we'll wrap the bar on him. So when we come here, do you feel it more in the center or more to the outer edges?
Outer edges.
Okay. Okay, so this is different authorities, you might say, or different degrees of pressure that we put on horses. We're still trying to give them as much as release as we can, and we're trying to figure out where we need to go with that particular individual.
We use different bits on different horses depending on what they need, and we have some big strong horses that definitely need a little bit more tongue pressure so that they can respond to their riders more quickly and more softly. And other horses just absolutely can't stand the tongue pressure. And that was one of the things I really learned using the Myler bits, how important it is for these horses to make their tongues comfortable. And that was something that had sort of been missed through my beginning education.
If the bits were ever legalized into the dressage discipline, are they something that you would use in the show ring yourself?
Definitely, because it depends on what works on the horse. And if you get a better response from these horses in this bit that's actually milder, the horse is more comfortable, you get a better ride, why not? I find that most of these bits are much, much milder and kinder to the horse than most of our legal bits. A plain snaffle can be extremely severe, and in the wrong hands, it's brutal. So I feel that, yeah, these bits, I don't see why they shouldn't be legalized.
The reason that we built the bridle bits that are independent from side to side was so that we could control either side, isolate one side or the other, and leave the off side alone. If I set a horse here, I can drop the outside rein, pick the inside shoulder up, and make the maneuver I'm trying to make. Otherwise, let me show you another set of bridle bits here. This is virtually the same bit that we were just looking at, only in a solid type of port. So what happens here is no matter how I pick up on the horse with either rein or go straight on, the whole mouthpiece will activate. I can't pick up independent and only use part of my bridle bit. However, both of these bits, when I take a hold of both reins, to take a hold of a horse and ask him to come to me, have the same amount of authority. Because when you take a hold of both reins, you engage the whole mouthpiece on both bridle bits.
More advanced level 2 bits can offer a variety of pressure points and tongue relief, as shown here with a forward tilt ported barrel or MB36 mouthpiece. A unique design, the MB36 works off the top of the bars and offers a generous amount of tongue relief when the horse is relaxed at the pole. However, should the horse leave his comfort zone, the port rotates forward, applies pressure across the tongue, and asks the horse to relax at the pole again. The correctional ported barrel, or MB27PB, collapses on the bars and applies concentrated pressure on top of the tongue. With some tongue relief in the port, this mouthpiece may be the choice for a horse that still needs a fair amount of tongue and bar pressure. The correctional ported barrel, or MB41PB, also collapses on the bars, but as you can see, it offers a great deal of tongue relief before restricting the tongue. This mouthpiece works well for the horse that responds to wrapping bar pressure, needs some tongue pressure for control, but also wants a higher degree of tongue relief for comfort. The low-ported barrel narrow, or MB43LP, also provides a good amount of tongue relief, but it is solid, applying direct bar pressure and some pressure on the top of the tongue. A horse which is not ready to have its tongue completely released, but needs a fair amount of tongue relief and is responsive to direct bar pressure, would likely go well in this bit. As you can see, advanced Level 2 bits take on many different shapes and designs. Level 2 bits are intended for the maturing horse or the horse with intermediate training, and in some cases may be appropriate for use on Level 3 finished horses. With some pressure across the tongue, Level 2 bits may apply direct pressure or collapse onto the bars and offer some degree of tongue relief. The amount of pressure offered in your horse's level 2 bit is determined by your horse's training, disposition, and resistance to his previous bit. Remember, always look to less pressure when you confront bit resistance. When a horse has become a level 3 horse, he is broke, finished, or highly advanced in his training. He is confident and reliable, a true, solid citizen. Level 3 bits are the reward you give to your horse for his training and outstanding disposition. Level 3 bits are the least restrictive bits, offering the least amount of pressure and the greatest amount of tongue relief. But the milers feel it is very important that the horse be ready for a level 3 bit, for the tongue, an important area of influence and control, has now been released. Take a look at the medium port wide, or MB16. A solid mouthpiece with a generous port, it works off the top of the bars with no pressure on the tongue. Then there's the medium wide port comfort snaffle, or MB05. Although it is called a snaffle, it is far from a traditional snaffle in its action. The MB05 offers freedom of the tongue, features independent side movement, and wraps around the bars for dispersed pressure. And finally, the ported barrel, also known as the MB33. Very mild, this mouthpiece works only on the top of the bars, offers complete tongue relief, and features independent side movement for bending, turning, and picking up a shoulder. So in summary, level 3 bits work mainly off the bars, releasing the tongue for the maximum comfort of the horse.
If I had my way, every horse I ever rode would have went in this set of bridle bits. However, disposition-wise, they couldn't. But all I might have wanted to do was merely go here. Okay? See the difference between these two bits? See how wide this bit is underneath? This is the same type of bit, but it's narrower underneath. So this horse can, because when they swallow, their tongue will twist, he can move that tongue in and out of there to swallow. When I pick him up here, I won't interfere with him, but when I ask him to come to me, I'll come down on his tongue in two places and say, no, I want you here, where this one won't do that. And that may be the only difference I want in my bridle bit, to get him to say, oh, I understand. All right? And there again, you're looking for the comfort of a horse. Some horses will not handle movement like this, just like some people won't eat cottage cheese. So you're trying to figure out as you're going along training your colts, when you're starting them, where do I need to go? And that's the reason that you can't just buy one set of bridle bits and put it on every horse that you ever step up on, or every horse that you ever put behind a cart. They don't have the same dispositions. But you don't have to buy 1,000,000 bridle bits either. Watch your horses. Watch the bits, know where the bits are hitting that horse that you're working with, and if he starts trying to evade you, then figure out what it is about it. If it's a bitting issue, figure out what it is about that mouthpiece he's trying to evade, take that portion out of your next mouthpiece. But as you're doing that, always pay attention to the disposition of that horse. Because if you're watching the disposition of him and paying attention to that, when you go in and look for a different bridle bit, you're not going to look for one that's going to completely release him. You're going to look for one that's going to give him a little release, but to have some authority to say, come to me when I need you to.
In review, level 3 bits are appropriate for the mature, advanced horse or the horse with finished training. Level 3 bits release the tongue and utilize a variety of pressure points. So now you are familiar with the levels of horses and mouthpieces. But there's more to consider about bits, such as ports, shanks, and curb pressure.
If you're riding an English horse, and you happen to be riding a breed association horse such as AQHA, Paints, Apps, Penos, Morgans, Arabians, you're allowed 1.5 inch port on an English bit, all right? However, if you're riding in a Western discipline, you're allowed up to 3.5 inch port on a set of bridle bits. And in one of the disciplines, you can go to a 4 inch port on a set of bridle bits. Now I'm looking here and I'm seeing some expressions on the English riders. All right, if you're an avid English rider and you walk into a tack store and you see a 3.5-inch port on a set of bridle bits, you almost do everything except fall down and have a coronary, is how anybody can be that harmful to a horse and treat a horse like that. But there again, let's look the situation over and see what's actually happening inside that horse's mouth. If it's also true that a horse breaks between the first and second vertebrae to break at the pole, then it's true the closer I am to the break point, the easier it is for him to break and give to it. You just lighten your hands and allow him to give to it. So ported bits that go to the palate are not bad bits. They're not severe bits if they're handled right. Snaffles aren't severe bits. Any bit is not a severe bit handled right. What they do is they ask a horse to come to the bridle from different points of pressure. Here's a bit here that will go to the palate, okay? But you can pick him up independent. You can work him. When you pick up here, it'll roll into the palate and ask a horse to drop to it. Another thing, if you're riding a Western pleasure horse and this horse starts to lift up out of the bridle bit and you've got a bit that reaches the palate on him, when he starts to lift and bring that nose out, the shanks will come back on that bridle bit. The mouthpiece will go up, bump him in the palate, and ask him to drop back to it without the rider ever taking hold of the rein. On an English horse, you probably don't want a bit that goes to the palate like that because you've always got the contact. So you want to give the tongue relief and stay out of the palate to allow a horse to be more comfortable and relaxed and stay into the bridle for you. So it depends on what discipline you're using. The difference being is a Western horse is pitched away 95% of the time. English horses are on contact 95% of the time. So you bit to that discipline also, but you give as much freedom for relaxation and comfort as you can. What determines the length of shank you're going to go get for them horses? Shank has nothing to do with the horse. Shank is for the rider, not the horse. The mouthpiece is for the horse. The slower and softer the hand is, the longer a shank that you would put on that horse. The quicker and stouter the hand is, the shorter the shank you would put on the horse. You'd get the shank for a rider, not a horse, because the shank and the hand is what activates the mouthpiece. You lift your hand up, you get the headset and you drop your hand, all right? So the hand is what's causing the bit to activate. We're just looking at the shanks of the bits. This is swept back. What I'd like Colleen to do is just pick her hand up and see how far she's got to move to make contact. Right there. See where her hand goes? So that's where she would go to make contact. Now let's pretend, instead of being swept back, let's pretend that this shank is straight. Now, Colleen, if you'll pick up. See the difference? There's about 2 to 2.5 inches difference. So the straighter the shank, the quicker the mouthpiece will activate. So the length of the shank is for the rider, not the horse. So what you're doing, if you have real slow, soft hands, you would use a longer shank on your bridle bit. If you've got real stout, quick hands, you would use a shorter shank on your bridle bit. The shanks on Western bits and on English bits, you'll have solid shanks like this, where they have no movement here. They're solid on the cheek piece. Okay? And what this does, a lot of times if you're schooling in them and you pull a horse face here, you're going to pull from this side through him. You see, a lot of times they'll pick up on this bit and them old horses will kind of cock their face and come this direction rather than bring that shoulder and that nose and just sweep around to you. When they went from a solid shank bit to where the whole shank turned, it revolutionized the horse training industry because it gave a horse an opportunity to start to move to something. If that horse starts to move when this shank starts to move, you're virtually staying out of his face. And then what we did is we tried to take it a step farther for comfort and make it to where it never interferes with the horse. As you can see here with this shank, it's independent top and bottom. So when you pick up on that horse and make your lateral move, your head stall stays flat against the horse. If you go here and you make your move, your head stall lays flat. So it's the most forgiving bit that we build, but we do all the bits because not every horse needs a bushing. And we're the only people that do the bushing because we have it patented. But it is our most forgiving bit. If you're using those bits and you're using a curb strap, what is rule of thumb for setting a curb? 2 fingers. Okay, that is. It's been a rule of thumb. Some people think it's 2 fingers shoulder to shoulder like this. Some people think it's 2 fingers head to tail like this. Myself, personally, I'm trying to get to the comfort of that animal. We don't all have the same sized hands. So when I bid a horse up, I'll stand to the side of them, whether it's in an English bit or a Western bit, and I'll only allow the cheek piece to move 1.25 inches. Now I want my curb chain to take hold of that horse and help me finish the maneuver I'm trying to make with him. If I've got a curb real loose on him, there's 2 things that'll happen. If I've got a bit on him with a port that goes to the pallet, I'm just going to slap him in the pallet every time I pick up before my curb engages, my curb strap. The other thing is if my curb's too loose and I let my shank get up here, I've lost my bridle bit again. Now there's exceptions. That's rule of thumb. Okay? Here again, it is comfort that you're looking for. Where can this horse be the most relaxed to do his job? So as you're working this horse, there's going to be horses where you might want to tighten that curb up 1 hole from there, because that will stand the mouthpiece up a little more for him and won't let it rotate as far. And that might be exactly where that horse needs to be to have the comfort. Gives him just that little ever so much room and freedom of that tongue. Another horse, you might want to drop it 1 more hole from that position to allow your bit to rotate just a little farther and let that horse know you're going to handle him. So that's just a starting point, and then you work with the horse from there and let the horse tell you.
By now, you've learned about how bits work with your horse. But what do you need to consider in order to select a proper bit for your horse? If you are experiencing bit resistance with your horse, the milers feel it is important to not only address what your horse is doing that you don't like, but to consider a number of other factors prior to bit selection.
So what you should really do when you walk into a tack shop, if in fact you feel that you might have a bitting issue, go in there prepared to answer some questions. You know approximately how old your horse is. You know when the last time his teeth were worked on. Is his mouth in good shape? What bridle bits have been on your horse? Well, now I know by what you've told me, the bits where they're hitting the horse, or whoever is in the tack shop knows where the pressure points of that particular bit are. Okay? Now, what bit has this horse worked the very best in? Well, when you tell us what he's worked the best in, now we know what's happening. Are we applying more pressure? Are we giving a little release in certain areas from the previous bits? What's going on? What kind of a disposition does this horse actually have? Is he a horse that's willing and he's really wanting to try all the time? Or is he a horse that's always bulling on into the lines or into your hands? And he's always being belligerent with you. Now we're trying to figure out where we might be able to go. What kind of hands do you have as an individual? See? Don't be afraid to say, well, my hand, I'm trying all the time because that's what everybody's doing. We're trying. But I feel my hands are strong. You know, they're tough hands. Don't be afraid to say that, because that determines, like I said, the shank is for the hands. The D-ring is for the hands. Anytime you attach things, but that also, because of the hands, you might go to a little different mouthpiece to allow you to pick up the way you pick up and have the horse come to you for the way you pick up on him. And that's what you're trying to do. So you want to answer these questions. Now, when you've answered these questions, now you've given a mental picture to who you're talking to in that tack store. So now they can turn around to you and they can say, you know, with the information that you've been giving me and the way we've been talking, it sounds like your horse is what we'd consider this level of training. Now, within this level of training, whether it's these bits or other bits, these are bridle bits that are usually used within that level. And this is how this bit works, this is how this works, or so on and so forth. Now it goes back to you. because you don't want somebody telling you that you have to buy this bit and you're uncomfortable with that bit. That's why there's different selection of mouthpieces within the levels of bitting horses. Now you're comfortable with what you've went out of the shop with. You're comfortable with the fact that you have made a discussion back and forth as to where you think your horse might possibly be. But still, you want to realize nobody's looked at your horse. Nobody's seen your horse go. They don't know anything except the information you've given them, so you want to give them as much information as you can to make as accurate a selection as you can try and make on a horse. We do not train horses. We do not tell you how to train horses. We're only trying to build bridle bits to make your horse more relaxed for you, to train your horse however you see fit. So if we get this job done, that's all we're after. Now this allows your trainer to correct the problem that you're having with your horse, because the horse has got more focus on you as the rider. And if it's partly you, partly the bit, partly the horse, this trainer now will be able to pick this out and help you correct it. And that's why you've established a relationship with a professional trainer, or ask knowledgeable people as you are training a horse that have helped you along. People learn things at a different rate, and so do horses. A lot will depend on the age of the horse. A lot will depend on what bridle bits have been used on the horse, how big a change you're trying to make. Some horses will grasp this concept or grasp the release that you're giving them within a matter of a half an hour. Other horses may take 2 weeks. But if you see this much of a difference in this horse, and that means his mind is trying to figure something out, it is certainly worth your while and your time to continue with this bridle bit that you've chosen till you've had ample time to give yourself and the horse an opportunity to find where the comfort zone is. And that's where you're asking him to come to.
Choosing a bit that you think will work best is the beginning of improving communication with your horse. Say you've selected a new bit. Now what do you do? The milers feel it is very important to properly transition your horse to a new bit. First, you need to be patient and kind. The new bit may work and feel differently from your horse's other bit. Take some time to let your horse get used to the bit. Allow your horse to stand with the bit for 10 or 15 minutes before mounting or driving. Mouthing the bit is common as a horse gets used to a new bit's feel and taste. Once under saddle or in the lines, let your horse warm up and stretch with the bit before you really ask much from him. Then, once you start to work your horse in the new bit, be sure to listen to your horse. Take note of resistance. Is it less or more with the new bit? It's possible that he may meet his new bit with resistance at first, especially if his bit resistance was established over time, but gradually things should get better. Don't expect drastic changes overnight. Sometimes you can tell if a bit will work in as little as 15 minutes, but typically it takes 3 to 10 rides before you can determine if a bit is appropriate for your horse or not. If you experience a small improvement, that might be all to ask for that day. Also, your horse may be using himself differently than before, so he may tire rather easily. The milers highly advocate using their bit transition exercise. Easy to do, the transition exercise gently introduces your horse to the new bit's feel and action, and is also an excellent suppling exercise to use every day.
When we bit a horse up, what we do, instead of taking a hold of a horse and pulling him to a bridle bit, we put very light contact. I take a hold of a lock of mane, I just put my hands on his withers, and I let the horse do whatever he wants to do. The only time he will be released is when he comes to me, and that's the comfort zone of the bridle bit, and that's exactly where I want him when I'm showing him. So anything else besides where I'm asking him, he's making himself a little uncomfortable. So we just give him an opportunity. And we'll wait on him. Patience and repetition is the key to training. Oh, son. If the horse goes someplace, we'll ask him to stop, and if he keeps going, we'll just walk with him and ask him. Oh, son. Oh. Oh, son. he comes to me, I'll let him know that I think he's done something good. Then I'll ask him again. And I'll ask him to find the comfort zone that I've designated for him. Another thing is you'll notice when we work with horses, there's no flashes, figure eights, cabezons, or drop nose bands on their horses. They ride the horse. When we ride a horse and change bits, we go with a head stall and a bridle bit. If there's a cabezon, it's on so loose you could stick your hand through it. It's not on there to keep a mouth shut.
Yeah, I'm not a big believer in quick fixes, and I guess I've been at it long enough, that my philosophy I do believe in, and I always go back to it, through all the years and Olympics or whatever, but always back to the basic philosophies that work for me. Patience, I think is so important, and I do believe in our sport. It's a little difficult for people today, and a lot of the younger people. They want results now, and in my sport there's so much money, and every weekend there's a Grand Prix, and they go, and I believe the horses can't do it all the time, or you'll burn them out. Like Eros, who I've had since he was a 5-year-old, and he's 14, and I still think he can go probably till he's 20 because of the way I've managed him. And many of my top horses, Starman, my other Olympic horse that I had for years and years and years, and happy and sound and enjoying their work and being patient. As you say, go home, do a little homework, go again. And most of my show jumpers, especially the ones that are competing, the younger ones, they need to practice a little at home. There are enough shows today that I almost never jump them at home, and I tell people in my clinics, flat work, fitness, some out here, some days hacking and fitness in their wind, but basic dressage in between, just like going to the gym or yoga or Tai Chi. And then, too, when you go to jump, the horses are happy and they're careful and they want to jump, along with, I believe, sounder, instead of jumping them to death. And because of the flat work, I don't need to jump.
However, we do understand, Ann, that the bit's not what trains a horse.
No, but it's a big help. And I started riding Eros in 1996 in this bit, and he's been in it ever since. And he is a real Olympic horse. In Atlanta, he was only 9. He was still a little on the green side, and put in fabulous performances, huge jumps. He has a big heart and great character. And the biggest thing with Eros is to stay out of his way. Loads of flat work. Initially, being a thoroughbred, he didn't care for the flat work. He doesn't want to do a lot of dressage, and yet, just through repetition, got quite lovely on the flat. And then when I go to jump, the less I do and the lighter I can be with him, the better he performs. Remember that at Devon, getting your bit the first time, huh? Remember that? Remember?
Well, I think first of all you have to figure out the individual that you're going to bit, and I think a lot of it has to do with their brain, their age, and actually the level that they're at. But I think with training horses, I think you want to stay on a simple basis, and that goes with the tack too. I think the bit's very important, of course, I think, but as close to simplicity with a young horse, I think you're going to get a better response with that. I think making it comfortable for them and get them so they give in, and I think that's a very important aspect. I don't think we want to get them defensive. I think it's very important that everything is pleasant to them so they're more receptive to our training methods. When you go around a hunter course, you'll be telling your horse a lot of things, but you don't want it to be evident. It has to look smooth and it has to look relaxed, and you might be telling him something all the way around the course, but according to the audience and the judge, you want it to be very smooth and hidden, actually, as far as the aids go and as far as what exactly you're doing. A loose rein and a relaxed horse with a relaxed head and neck and a good top line, that's what we're looking for. And of course it doesn't happen if they're unhappy with the bit or unhappy in their mouth. Every horse is an individual. Every horse has different needs. And for sure your product has filled a gap for us, or for me anyway, as far as as far as a training aid. I think along with a good noseband, I think your bridle has helped us immensely with a lot of different horses, for sure. We enjoy the success with them.
Now, Ron, one thing I found out about the Myler bits is they're not going to work totally today, and they might work some better tomorrow, and they might probably going to even work better the next day. But just to throw one on there and say, oh, it don't work, and take it off, you really haven't given the bit a fair chance. These Myler bits, the way that they move and what the horse is actually feeling, you have to give these bits, say, a week or 10 days in the practice pen. I tell my girls in the clinic that it's not practice that makes perfect, but it's perfect practice that makes perfect. Because you can repeat a wrong thing. You know, I could tell you that 5 times 5 is 24. And even though I keep repeating it, that doesn't make it right. You have to keep telling these horses what the truth is in a way that they understand it, and that it's perfect practice that makes perfect. And when you go to the practice pen, it should create one really important aspect when you leave there, and that should be confidence.
We hope you've learned a little more about bits and how to properly bit your horse. As you know, the bit is just a part of your relationship with your horse, but it is a very important communication tool. Aim for your horse to be relaxed and comfortable with his bit so that you both can enjoy the most effective communication possible. We wish you success with your horse.
And don't forget, be open-minded about your bit choices. Understand resistance. For proper transition, go softer. Use patience, repetition, and kindness. And finally, a relaxed animal better understands your communications.
We always try to quit on a good note. You can never quit on a bad note, because that's the last thing he'll remember or she'll remember. And the other thing that's important is, like you said, if you're trying to work on one particular thing and you've done a bunch of other different maneuvers, and that one maneuver is the one that you've been having a hard time with, and all of a sudden he gets it correct, quit. Be patient and practice a lot.
There's no such thing as a quick fix or a quickly trained horse, is there, Guy?
Never has been, never will be.
When we do a clinic, if somebody comes in and the horse is very relaxed in the bridle, we don't change bits on him. I believe that a horse, wherever he's the most comfortable and relaxed, that's where he needs to stay, because if he becomes unrelaxed, he will let you know about it.
You know, about not changing the bit, as they say. If it's not broken, don't fix it. You don't need any hands, Dale.
Remember, at Myler, the bit's designed with the horse in mind.
To learn more about the Myler bidding system, attend a Myler bidding clinic or seminar. The Mylers are actively conducting clinics and seminars on a regular basis. With expert guidance, a personal bidding will pinpoint your horse's particular bidding issues and work toward positive and effective solutions. Read the Myler's book, A Whole Bit Better, which covers how bits work, bit resistance, and the Myler's philosophy of bidding horses. Available in a handy paperback, the book also reviews each Myler mouthpiece and cheek design. And finally, visit your Myler Bits dealer. Dealers have bits, books, and helpful literature available, and can also assist you with your bit selection. Don't see the bit you need? Just ask. Dealers can order any stock or handcrafted bit design available. For more information, visit us on the web at www.toklat.com or www.mylerbitsusa.com, or write to us at Myler Bits, in care of Toklat, P.O. Box 488, Lake Oswego, Oregon, USA 97034.